Welcome back to Home Cooking Hacks. We're going to do a Home Cooking Hacks quick tip. So what we're going to do today is just talk about how to make a graham cracker crust. Whether you want this for an ice cream cake or some other nefarious purpose, we're going to teach you how to do a graham cracker crust. This is one of the ones that I have that does unfortunately require us to buy some processed food. I have here some graham crackers. And what we're going to do for a graham cracker crust is I'm going to get some type of pan. So this guy here is, I didn't get the exact dimensions, it's like a 6x9 or some type of Pyrex pan. This one actually is nice because it has a lid to it. And so my Pyrex pan with a lid is nice and handy because, you know, I can, whatever my cake or pie is, I have a nice lid for that as well. But we want to use 1.5 cups of graham cracker, and so I'm going to use my food chopper here, or food pureer, and we're going to chop that down into 1.5 cups. I want to use 1/3 cup of sugar. See if I can find a 1/3 cup. There's a 1/3 cup of sugar, and so we want that. And then we're going to add 6 tablespoons of butter. I don't even know if this has 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5. I'm going to have to get 1 more tablespoon of butter. 6 tablespoons of butter. And then the thing that really makes a graham cracker crust really good is to add a little touch of cinnamon. So we're going to use 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. So with those, we're going to mix everything together, and then we will go ahead and make our graham cracker crust. So we are ready to start preparing the graham cracker crust. So what I'm actually going to do here is 1.5 cups of graham cracker is approximately the amount that we get out of one little package. And so I'm going to start grinding this up the best I can. And then I'm going to put it into my larger measuring cup here just to verify that's the proper size. So this is the cup I'm going to use. Let's go ahead and set my food processor here. Hopefully have enough cord room here to put that right in the view of the camera, which I do. Just going to kind of speed this up as I process this stuff here. So pretty much what we're going to do is I'm just going to grab, open this packet up. I said we should use pretty much exactly one of these packets of graham cracker to do this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of break into little chunks like that. And then gotta find my lid, and then we'll just kind of, might have to force some of this down there. It's okay, it's all getting crushed anyway. Okay, now a fun little tip is if you shake, any large chunks are going to move back up to the top, so I can see if there's still big chunks to move. And there's, that one looks pretty big. I'm just going to take that out for a second. I'm just going to dump this into my measuring cup just so I can start measuring. Again, we want 1.5 cups of graham cracker. That's what we're shooting for. So leveling that off, that gives me just under 1 cup. That should be pretty good. As long as like this big of chunks is not a problem. If you get much bigger than that, you're going to want to shave them down a little bit. Okay, so looking at my levels there, we can see we're right underneath 1.5, so that's going to be good. So just use 1 pack of those graham crackers when you're doing this. That should be sufficient enough, and that way if you don't even have to necessarily measure it. Next we want to do 1/3 cup of sugar. So I have a 1/3 measuring cup here. Mix that in, and then I want 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. So I have a 1/4 teaspoon measure here, so I'm just going to put 2 of these quarters in. Okay. And now what we want to do is just use a fork and stir this around, just get it all mixed up nicely. Now, while you're chopping this part up, you want to start melting the butter. You can choose whatever method you want to melt the butter. What I actually did today is I just threw it in the oven because the oven's preheating. It looks like it's not quite melting quite as fast as I'd probably like it to, so I'm gonna let that sit for just a minute or so more. You could put it in the microwave for a little bit. Melted the butter. I just went ahead and melted it in the microwave, and just verify it's all melted there. which it is. And so now the task is you just pour it right on into there. And then we're going to stir this around within an inch of its life with the fork. You can get in there and play with it with your hands too if you want. I find that a fork is just sufficient, and you know, other people generally eat these too, so even though you wash your hands, I try to mess with stuff as little as possible. So I'm just going to pour that directly into our pan, which is actually still a little warm from being in the oven. So I want to cook this for about 5 or 10 minutes or so in the oven. Probably about 5 minutes is sufficient. Many recipes will not have you cook it if you find graham cracker recipes, but what it does, it solidifies it, makes it a little bit crispier, gives it actually a little bit better of a crusty flavor if you do cook it. So that's why I like to cook it. All right, you can actually lick that bowl clean later for yourself. That's the cook's dessert portion. I'm just going to use the fork here and just kind of even it out as much as I possibly can, and then just use the fork to flatten it. You can also use this flat spatula, which if it wasn't back behind the computer right now, I'd probably reach for one and do that, but this will work just fine. It's got to spin it a little bit and to get your angles right. And the idea here is we want to get it a little bit compressed as much as we can. That's actually why it's better to use a spatula than a fork, because you can get a better compression area. But this will work just fine. And if you don't cook it, it will be a little bit crumbly. If you do cook it, it'll be a little bit flatter, like a much better base. The other thing actually you can use that I do have handy is you can use a measuring cup like this. You'll notice that if you do that, you will get it creeping up around the edges a little bit. So after I get this done, then I'm going to use the fork, flatten just those edge parts back down like that. And that's ready for the oven. So we're going to cook this for about 5 or 10 minutes in the oven. So it's been about 5 minutes or so, and so I'm going to have a quick look at the crust. It's looking pretty good. You'll see it's a little bit... I can grab another something here to hold this pan with. It's a little warmer for this thing here. I prefer the towels anyway. See here that it does have just a little bit of darker edges around the very edges there. That's exactly what we want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this in the refrigerator until we're about ready for it, if I have room.